Mm-hmm. Nice. Okay, well, I think we can just get right into it. So welcome to everyone who's joining. Just ask your questions in the Q&A thingy, and Vera can answer them for you. Just to kind of start off, can you explain like what Resilient Island does? Like talk a little bit about your Maldives Matter project and kind of when it all started.
Yeah, okay. Well, Resilient Island, that's the big organization behind the project Maldives Matter. Well, the project is about making remote places like islands, small island developing states, for example, to make them more self-sufficient and more resilient to the modern world. Because, for example, within this Resilient Island, we have the project Maldives Matter, and Maldives are super depending on imports. They import 95% of all their food consumption, which is obviously a lot, and which is bad for the environment, but also the cash flow for the Maldives is quite one way. And well, this Corona period is the perfect example of the isolation that they are always in. So they are super dependent on all kinds of stuff outside their own country. And to fight that, we are building a greenhouse on the Maldives to make it possible for them to grow their own food, because that's not possible at the moment because of the climate. Because plants need a certain temperature difference between day and night, like humans, to get their rest. And in the Maldives, the temperature is super constant, so they have kind of 28 degrees always. And therefore, it's not possible to grow food. And we build a greenhouse which cools during the night to make it possible to grow their own food. That's kind of the project that we're working on and why.
That's awesome. So when did it start?
It started about two and a half years ago, when the founders, that's 5 people, they also study all architecture at the TU, and they did a studio which is called Architectural Engineering, and it was about the Maldives. And they had this problem of waste, because with all the import there comes a lot of waste with it, which they can't produce themselves within this small country. And they had a studio about it, and after the studio they had this feeling like, okay, this is a real existing problem, this is also, we might have a real solution, so why are we stopping with this just because it was a school project? That's just dumb. So they were like, we're really gonna do this. And yeah, so that's basically when they decided to start a foundation. But then after working on it for, I think, half a year or something, they realized, okay, if we really want to do this, we're really gonna need money, and therefore they also have now a holding, BV for Dutch people, and that's how it really started as a company, as a startup.
Awesome.
And now they started graduating, and that's why 5 new people came into the project, yeah, as a sub, how do we say that? The interim board, kind of. Yeah.
Cool. So what are like your main tasks within the foundation?
My main tasks are about the social and the cultural implementation of the project, because what's really important is that this is not this Western modern project just dumped into this country and run by Western people, because it's not going to be this embracement of the project there. So we really try to implement it as good as possible to make it a real project of the local people. So my main tasks are I'm in contact with the government, with the local islands, with the island councils, with the potential building locations. We have 3 potential building locations still. But also I'm busy working on educational program to be able to educate the people who are going to work in the greenhouse.
Wow.
Yeah, because they like in this they do some kinds of small food growing stuff, but the technology that we want to use, they've never seen that. So they really need to be educated to be able to work there.
Mm.
But that's also kind of a interesting part of the project.
Mm. So, because I imagine that, because you're saying that it's like a cultural difference needs to be taken into account, and that it shouldn't be just, us trying to kind of dominate this section, but you need to integrate the people. So what are some challenges that you've run into so far in trying to do so? If there are.
Yeah, well, the biggest challenge is just the knowledge. They really don't have any agricultural knowledge at all. In the same moment, we as Dutch people, like we are really one of the, I think even the best in the whole world on this topic. Like the greenhouses, the technologies that we have is super innovative, and they just don't have the knowledge. I think that's the biggest challenge. But if you really see it in a local perspective, they yeah, it's, for me, that's something I'm worrying about sometimes, is how do you get people to work for something that they really don't know yet. So we are gonna go there and say, we have a job for you, but you don't know what it is, but it's gonna be cool.
Mm.
And that's kind of that's, for example, a challenge that I have to deal with.
Mm. So I really wanted to ask you, like, what are some of the things you've learned, maybe personally, like working as a student in such an organization, but also in terms of this topic, like, because you're really working towards this like circular, self-sustaining system.
Yeah.
Like, do you look at other projects that have tried to do the same thing, that are trying to implement this? Like, how do you know if a place like that is kind of ready to embrace this circular system?
Yeah, well, that's, the answer to that is just patience. It's a long process, and you just have to do everything step by step. If the country is really ready, you never know, because it's never done before. And also on the scale and the technology that we want to use is never done in such countries. So knowing is something else than educated guessing or something. But yeah, we work on a big document to, of course, to prove everything. So I have all the aspects, which is a lot. Every time that I'm at events or stuff and we tell about the project and people start asking questions, and then it's like, oh yeah, oh well, this is also a part of the project, and oh, this is also a part. So it's just super wide. It's not focused on one thing. It's a lot. And we just took all the aspects and tried to test them if it's possible. And therefore we don't do that alone. Of course, we have a lot of partners, and that's the part of being a student, I think, because of course we don't have experience in agriculture at all. We are architecture students, so it's kind of off topic but if you talk about that, but we have a lot of advisors and partners who are helping us with this. So for example, we have a couple technical partners. One is really the greenhouse builder, and one is doing the climate systems, so the computers that you can also control from a distance and stuff like that. And they just help us with how to do stuff, and then it's kind of, we are just the spider in this web of all partners and parties, and also Maldivian parties and local people and everything. We are just providing the network, and we connect it all. So we have one party who says, okay, but I need to know this and this and this. And then just we search in our network, okay, and we bring all the parties together to one new concept. So the part of the concept that we used are not, they are already existing, but the way of combining all the parties and the parts, that's the concept, and that's the new thing that we do.
Oh wow, that's super interesting. I didn't even know that. That's really interesting. So yeah, what I also really wanted to ask you was, what are some of the challenges of being a student? And like you said, like you don't really have experience in this field or like in the working field at all. What are some of the challenges or like lessons that you've learned? Because I imagine some of the people that are watching this are students themselves. So what have been like kind of challenges in that regard? Also working with like the huge amount of stakeholders and like partners you just described.
Well, there's a lot of challenges, and there's one thing that I really learned, and that's just do it. And you just have to go to places and talk to people, although sometimes it's scary, and sometimes it's awkward, but you just have to go and talk and ask people. And also, for me personally, and I know some other girls also have this problem, is when you do such a project which is never done before, it's super difficult sometimes to know, how do I get where I want to go? So you know where you want to end, and you know what you want to achieve, but you really don't know how to get there. And there's no one telling you what to do. There's no teacher or boss or whoever telling you, oh, okay, you want to do this? Well, then you have to do this, this, and this. And I think that was, in the last period, the hardest part of all, just to decide, okay, where do I begin and what do I have to do? Another challenge is also finding this balance between being this young and ambitious team of students and being professional, because in the end we're talking about a lot of money, and people really have to believe in your project to, as a big company, to go with it. So and when you're super young, and our average age is around 23 or whatever. So when you come to a meeting, you have to put a bit more attention to, for example, how you look, to be taken seriously. So when we go to meetings, I'm sometimes even all in suit, and I have my business case with me, and it's really official. Well, if I was just 40 years old, I wouldn't have done that. Or some things like that. So you need to be, sometimes you need to be this extra professional thing, although you also really need to know when you need to use your student vibe. Because that's also why people would like to sponsor. If you're only this company, then they're like, well, if you're a company, you can pay it for yourself. So that's a hard thing to know when you have the right balance.
Yeah, I can imagine like to have to find this balance between those two things. But do you think, like, aside from, because what you're saying is that being a student is helpful in this case because it can get you sponsors, but do you think there are other like helpful aspects to being a student and operating in this field? Do you think it gives you a certain advantage, or maybe different insights, or anything like that?
I think a advantage is that we don't, like, at some point that's maybe a disadvantage, but the fact that we don't have all this experience is also the reason why we can really look objective to things. So we can just have a super fresh view on things, which people who are already working in that sector for a very long time don't have, for example. And I think that's also the whole reason why we are like, well, let's just do this. And because every time we go to people who really work in this sector for a long time, they are also a bit like, yeah, but it's really difficult, and there's this and this and this risk and whatever. And yeah, we know that. Otherwise, it was already done like 1,000 times, and we didn't have to be this innovative startup. So that's kind of, I think in that way, it's an advantage to be a student. You're just a bit naive and you can use it for a good reason.
Ah, that's really cool. I like that. Let's see. Right. So, what are kind of, with the whole project, where are you now, like, exactly, and what are like future prospects, things you want to achieve, challenges you want to overcome?
Yeah, well, at the moment, we just finished our investment proposal. So at the moment, we are looking for an investor who is really believing in our project and is willing to give us money. But it's not, that's a really difficult process, and you just have to be patient again. So I think that's the biggest thing that we've been working on the last months.
Oh, I think you froze. Oh no. Can you still hear me?
And that
Oh no.
I can.
Yeah?
Maybe
oh, you're back.
People can. Am I?
Kind of.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think you're fine.
Okay. What was the last thing that you heard?
That you were looking for investors, and that is kind of now the biggest challenge. I think that was the last thing.
Okay. Yeah, well, to be able to talk to investors, of course, that's not something that you do only via Skype or whatever, maybe in the beginning, but in the end, you have to meet them. So we were also planning a trip to the Maldives. Obviously, that's a bit hard at the moment because we were planning to go in June, and yeah, we have to see if that's possible.
Yeah, that's such a shame though.
Yeah.
So do you have a plan? Like, is it still possible to work on the project? Because I can imagine that you planned this trip because you're at a certain point in the process, and you know, you need to make that step at this point because it's the right time. But do you think that when you're not able to go, because obviously we have no idea how long this crisis is going to take, that you can still work on it regardless, or is that going to be really difficult?
Well, of course, we're not going to give up the whole project because we can't go. So if that will be the case, we have to come up with other things that we can work on. But yeah, it is true that we were kind of working to watch this moment. Okay, we have to have all this ready to go, and then we can just have this point of collecting all the data there and then use it again. But if that's not going to happen now, we just have to work around this. But also, you can do a lot to prepare a trip. And also, if the trip is not going to happen now, we still can do all the preparations. And the only thing is that we were also going there for some research on at the resort, for example, because the vegetables that we are growing in the greenhouse will be sold to resorts, because they ask for this super high quality. And we wanted to speak to a lot of them just to kind of have this proof of that we're doing the right thing. Of course, there's a lot of research already done in this area. So, but those things, everything's just uncertain. But I think if we are not going, we are going to find a way to work on it anyways. We're not planning to just say, well, if this trip's not going to happen, then screw the project. Of course not.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that was all for the questions I had. So I see that Tamara has asked some questions in the Q&A. So for everyone that is watching, if you have a question, you can ask it in the Q&A section, or you can click on raise your hand somewhere, or just say it in the chat. We can also allow you to speak if you have like a long, difficult question, or you just want to chat with Vera. Let us know, because I can allow you to speak. So, okay, let's start with Tamara's question. She says, hello, Vera. Very nice to hear about your initiative. I was wondering where you get inspiration, knowledge, examples for the interventions on the Maldives. Maldives?
Maldives.
Maldives, such as the greenhouse. Are there other initiatives in the world that already have experience with creating resilience in isolated communities?
Well, this is a lot.
So to summarize, like, do you take any inspiration, or are there already like existing examples of implementing such a strategy to create resilience in isolated communities?
Well, the inspiration came first of all, of course, from this course of the TU Delft, because the UNDP came to the TU to introduce this problem on the Maldives, which made it into a course. So that was the first inspiration, but really the topic isolated communities, yeah, there's already a lot done in this these kind of things, but most of the things are kind of solving the result of the problem, but not the beginning of the problem. So examples that are there, which we of course had as inspiration, are more solving what's the problem because of the initial problem. I'm trying to come up with an example what we could have done in the Maldives if this was our strategy. But so what I'm trying to say is that we are not trying to kind of solve the bad results, but we have this, so the kind of the roots of the problem, which is that they can't produce their own food. So we make them able to do so. Yeah, I know an example. So all this waste that's coming with all the import of the food, we could try to find a solution for how to get rid of all this waste in general. So they keep on importing, and then we give them a solution to get rid of the waste, which is less bad for the environment. That's possible. That's also things that are already done in a lot of places like this. So that's the experience with creating resilience, maybe. But we try to avoid having this waste anyway. So in general, no waste or less waste. I think that's the difference between what's already done and what we are doing now.
But I think that does kind of make it more difficult, right? Like, I feel like it might be easier to kind of deal with the aftermath than really attacking the core of the problem.
Yeah, yeah, of course, because otherwise if this was simple, the problem would not even be there. And most of the time the roots of the problem are more integrated in all kinds of systems. That's also why the project is so complex. And if a whole country depends on something, it's really hard to have this change just like this. But it also makes it more satisfying if it works, because the impact is also much bigger if you do it like that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I hope that kind of answers your question, Tamara. If not, let us know.
Let us know.
So yeah, I kind of already asked this in the beginning. She asked, what are the difficulties that you encounter in communicating with all these different people and parties? And in relation to that question, what knowledge do the people in Maldives have that you or the Dutch team lack?
Okay, the first question, the difficulties. There are a lot of difficulties because, well, you have really practical difficulties as time difference. But that's obviously not the biggest difficulty. It's already, you also just can feel difference in culture and how you approach people. We got to know a lot about the culture at first to be able to know how to get a conversation. For example, Dutch people are quite direct, and we can really, especially in business, we can really be like, okay, I have this idea and I want this from you, can you give me that or not? But in the culture that we experience in the Maldives, it's more like you have to talk first, get to know each other, be interested in each other, have some contact, and then get to the point and then ask your question. But that's a really practical thing which can really help you if you know about that.
Right.
But also, of course, you can't just go there and say, hi, can we have a chat? You're always depending on digital communication, and I think everyone now knows how that is. Sometimes that's just hard. But yeah, and also because they're not in Europe, you can't, also just calling is kind of hard. Or it costs you a lot of money, and we're students and have no money, so and so that's another difficulty, but that's also really practical, I think. And another thing is that if the one party is just you have this one party warm and having this cool conversation with, and then at some point you need something which we have to get from another party, and that party is not ready yet, then you have to keep this one party warm until the other part is ready. And that's sometimes hard, because also when you really plan things well, sometimes it's just not working how you planned it. Which is now at the moment also a big problem, because a lot of our Dutch parties are just super busy with saving their own company at the moment. So yeah, that's another difficulty, I think. And the other question, in relation to the previous question, what knowledge do people in the Maldives have that you? Well, I think the technical knowledge, for example, that's really not something that they have and we don't. But of course, just the local knowledge, like how life is there, and how, for example, we have a partner which is specialized in education, and that's on the Maldives. So they also really know a lot about how to approach the right people for the jobs you want to provide. Or, for example, we really would like to have women working in the greenhouse. That's another aspect that we try to implement, because most of the women there are not working at the moment because they have to stay home, or at least on the local islands, for the kids. Because the men are usually working, most of the men are working on resort islands, which is not the same. So they are away a lot, and then the women have to stay home. So we really would like to implement women to work in the greenhouse. But for example, they have the knowledge about, okay, what do women here want? And sometimes you really don't have this insight in what they really see that's necessary. And I once heard also a story about a super innovative idea about they were implementing thermo measurements for sick people in, I don't know where it was, but it was somewhere in Africa, for example, and they went there to test it, but these people just never heard of it, and they just tried to, these innovative Dutch people really tried to implement it right away, which was not working. It was something with the cold feeling of this thermo measurement thing was reminding them of violence with guns and stuff. And we never would have thought of something like that. This is just a random example. This has nothing to do with RIF, just to be sure that everyone knows that. But so this knowledge of people saying, yeah, you really need to provide this and this to have women, for example. Just this pure local knowledge, but you can't even think of what it would be. You just don't understand because you don't know the country that well.
Yeah, but I think it's really good that you are very conscious of that and approach that with a lot of care, and make sure that it is well received in the local community. I think that links nice to a question asked by Linda. She asked if you guys aren't afraid, because you talked about wanting to implement jobs for women, especially in the greenhouses. And she's wondering if, like, once you've implemented the greenhouse system there, that they're not just gonna like ask cheaper forces to work there. Like, how do you make sure that kind of the intent of your program stays there?
Yeah, that's a big worry, and I think Linda knows that. Yeah, well, that is partly it's gonna be the right investor. We just need the right investor because he will own the biggest part of the concept in the end. And you have to have someone who's really on the same side as you are, just with the same vision. And that's why this investor story is also quite complex, because you don't just need money. We need the right money. And so that's one thing. We really need to find someone with the same vision. And on the other hand, we try to cover this in some kind of contract. But yeah, it is a risk. It will be a risk, and there is I think we also will use our legal advisors a lot for this, just to try to cover as much as possible in contracts. But yeah, there will be this risk anyways, I think, at least. But I think we really want to have the right person to, like, this someone who really believes in the project. And if that happens, if you find the right guy, yeah, then you will be fine.
Oh, that's it. And are you looking for an investor in the Netherlands, or like locally there?
At the moment, we are just looking at investors locally there, also because we would like to combine it with launching clients, of buying the vegetables. So that will be a resort chain or whatever. But we also have some contacts already who are interested. So, but those are Maldivian parties. But we also, for example, have some. Well, our technical partners already invest a lot in the project in a way that they do a lot of research, but that's more in-kind sponsors than the really investors of the greenhouse itself. Yeah.
Okay. So then there's one last question that is asked. They ask, what will you do if you can't find an investor?
That would be really not nice. Actually, I think, but that's just gonna be a really big problem, because we don't have the capital to be able to build it. You can't just get a loan of an amount of money that I can't tell here. And yeah, that's just unrealistic. And but I think in the end we will get an investor anyways, but it might take a while. Yeah. But I think we're gonna push it until we have an investor. Yeah.
That's good. I like that mindset. So is there anyone else who has a question? Because this was all the questions that's been asked so far.
I hope I answered them well.
I think you did. I think you did a really good job.
If people don't think that I answered it well, then let me know.
Let us know. Tamara says, great job. Amazing.
Oh, thank you. That's really sweet.
Oh, we have another question. How do you feel PR plays into the success of this project?
Well, that's really an important subject of everything. And we have, so at the moment we have 5 people working full-time on the project, and it's even the PR is this important that we have one role completely devoted to this part, also with marketing included. I think it's a big relevance, but also because you have this project, we don't produce sub projects or sub articles or products or whatever to show in between. So if we have people interested at the moment, we have to keep them interested until this greenhouse is really there, which is going to take a while, of course. We already work on it for, yeah, well, 2.5 years. And that means that from the beginning, there were already people looking at it, but there's still no greenhouse. And how do you get your people to be interested all the time? And I think PR is a really big part of that. And we try to have all kinds of updates and posts and social media, newsletters, everything to keep everyone posted on what we do. And but also we have this, every message that we send to someone is in the same style, and I think we really have a solid way of showing ourselves to the outside world. At least that's what we're really trying to do. But yeah, that's from really big importance.
All right. So that were all the questions that have been asked so far. So if there are no questions left, then I would like to thank you for being here and informing us on this beautiful project. I encourage everyone who is watching now to check them out. It's at Resilient Island. They're also in like our social media stories and everything. And yeah, thank you so much. Do you have anything to like last remarks to say to the people watching?
Well, I think the biggest thing that I would like to say is keep your head up and just stay as sustainable as you can be. That's what it's all about.
Right, I like that. Yes, and to help you with that, you can check out our page, ReclaimEUC.com. There are a lot of cool like sustainable lifestyle tips already posted, and you can join in by posting your own like recipes or tips and tricks, so that yeah, we can all stay connected and like help each other out. So Vera, thanks so much again for being here. And thanks everyone who watched. 11 people, that's amazing. Yeah, thank you for watching, and I will also post the interview recording on the website as well. All right, thanks guys. See you whenever, and stay safe.